Now I feel like a YouTube star now.
Oh yeah. It's always good. So there is a YouTube channel for this.
Yeah, we do have this Cloud and Serverless Turkey YouTube channel for our community. So I was hesitating of how to call it.
Nice.
So you can see it. I'm sharing the link.
This is kind of always in live events when you're waiting for people to join. It's like, what I should do now.
So you don't know what to say. Just trying to be funny is also makes you funnier.
Yeah, I don't know I think small chat or something at the beginning, so people are not like waiting in there. I don't know. It's always weird for me when I start a live event. It's like what I say. I don't want to start yet because people are joining, but I don't want to be in silence for 10 minutes. It's just awkward.
Yeah. So pre-recorded talks are better in this perspective. So, but it just starts very urgent. You know, someone just appears and starts talking. It also feels weird, but seems like there is no time for that.
Yeah. But you need to wait a little bit. At least it's a good practice. Nobody joins on time.
Exactly.
And I have been in webinars where we start right on time, and then 5 minutes later, people are like, "What is this person talking about?" It's like, okay, good.
So let's start in 2 minutes, right?
I'm ready when you tell me. But maybe for the people joining, we can remind them that there will be a big AWS Summit for EMEA happening on the 17th of June. So you will find the links for that in the AWS webpage. It will be 55 sessions, and there will be 11 tracks, and it's pretty amazing event. It's all the different topics for all kind of different personas. Developers, architects, DevOps, sysadmins, I don't know, people working with managers and people that are new in the cloud, people that just want to see code. We will have a whole track of live coding. There is all kind of things. So I think that's something that everybody might be interested in checking out. It's a full day event, but all the sessions will be available on demand afterwards. So if you miss something, you can always go and rewatch it. So that's happening on the 17th of June.
And I'd like to also add the Serverless First Functions conference, which will be happening 21st and 28th of May.
Yes, that's more in American time. So it's a little harder for the European communities, but yes, definitely that's a good one to join.
So it will be kind of in my opinion, very great event. Like many people that I admire, just like meeting on this event and talking about like serverless. Jeff Barr, like no one knows much about him, but David Yanachek and the other developer advocates will talk about what serverless can bring, and I'm actually a bit excited about it. So we can.
And it's nice because it's divided like in two parts, one for developers and one for organizations. So it's good that different kind of personas can attend and get the best of the days.
Yeah. So I believe we can start with our session today. So like, hello everyone, good day, good morning, and I don't know, good afternoon for everyone who is listening us. And today we are going to talk about how we can take advantage of AWS Amplify and AWS AppSync, and we have a very knowledgeable expert with us. We have Marcia Villalba. We'll talk about AWS Amplify today, and I just made some practice about pronouncing her surname correctly. I think I achieved this.
Yes.
And introducing our meetup. So we do late night talks during this Ramadan time, and we also do this kind of sessions with our in English during the time. And we made something with Gunnar last month, and we are very happy to have something with Marcia again. And you can just follow us on community.com. You can watch the videos that we did on YouTube on our channel. And for this session, I'd like to remind you, Serhat already wrote about this, but please use the Q&A section to ask your questions. And if you'd like to say something, like let's say hi to all people, you can also use chat, but it will be better if I can track the questions from Q&A session. So I'm leaving it to Marcia now, and she will do a good presentation for us to learn.
I unmute myself, and thank you everybody for joining today. I'm happy that this meetup is having in the middle of the day. It's not common, so I'm super happy. Maybe you're having lunch with me right now, and I hope I will not make you suffocate with your food. But I will be talking about Amplify, and that's a topic I'm really passionate about. Right now, I'm looking at a lot about it because I think it's a great way to get started in building serverless applications in a super simple way. So the first thing, I want to introduce myself, just in case you don't know me. I'm a developer advocate for AWS. I've been in the company for 8 months. Before that, I was a serverless hero. So I've been working, doing this type of a job without getting paid for many years. So I love doing this. I love sharing the benefits of AWS and serverless mostly. And I'm the host of a YouTube channel called Fubar, where actually right now I'm making a full series around 10, 11 videos on Amplify and AppSync. That's what we are going to talk today. So if you want to get out more of these things that I'm going to share today, you can go and visit my YouTube channel. There is around 200 other videos that you can watch. So there is plenty of material for
I would say if you are in cloud, or especially in serverless, and if you are accustomed to learn from videos, there is no chance that you didn't see any Marcia video. So like everyone knows about like how educative the Marcia's videos on anything about serverless.
Yeah, and now during this time, I'm posting 2 or 3 times a week. So I think people will start unsubscribing because too much of me. But yeah, so go and check it out if you want to learn more about this topic. So let's start with Amplify. So this session is going to be a little bit of jumping here and there because I will show you some theoretical things, and then we will jump onto code. And let's hope it works because I like to do this as interactive as possible. Sometimes it's hard when you are having one screen, but I think it will be possible. And I have the slides with all the code available. So, and also a GitHub repo. So I will share that later, and you can get all the information to build this yourself as well. So what is Amplify? Amplify is many things. It's a framework with a lot of different open source libraries. These are mostly oriented to the client. Well, they are oriented to the client and includes UI components, a CLI that we will be using a lot, and I like it. A lot of libraries that will help you to connect the client to the backend. Then the CLIs, you will see how powerful it is. It will allow you to create in like one line of CLI connections to Cognito that if you want to make from scratch, it might take you a lot of learning and a lot of investigation to do it. But when you are using Amplify, it's just basically one line and a couple of selections. And then we can do the same for AppSync, for Elasticsearch, and for other services. And finally, it has a collection of developer tools that will help you to build, deploy, test, and host your entire application, not only the front end, but also the back end. And you can have, we will see it, multi-team working on this project with no problem. So basically, Amplify is a set of libraries that will enable full stack developers and client developers to work in the cloud. Super simple. And also it can be used in a separate way. So if you have a team of backend developers that are experienced with serverless, you can also use this in your client projects, because Amplify allows you to have a configuration file and connect it to your existing backend. So it's not that it's all magic. You can have the magical part, but you can also have the part that is more oriented to bigger teams where you have a backend team. So it's not only for prototypes, it's not only for first iterations, it's something that you can use in production in big organizations with no problem if you understand the architecture of Amplify. So the amount of libraries that are available are for Vue, React, I think React Native, Angular, Android, iOS, vanilla JavaScript, and this is open source, so people can bring their own library if they want. This is maintained by AWS, but everybody is welcome to contribute. And also there is its main cloud provider is AWS, but it's designed in a way that if we would like to have it multi-cloud, people can also contribute to this GitHub project without with other clouds if you want. But for now, all the providers are from AWS. So Amplify framework is a very opinionated framework, and that is what it makes it very magical if you're using the whole thing with the client, with the CLI and the framework and the developer tools. And what I mean with opinionated, it means that it comes with a lot of best practices built in, so you don't need to make a lot of decisions. So if you want to start, for example, authentication, and you go to the AWS console, or you want to build it with CloudFormation, you will have to make a lot of decisions when you're configuring Cognito that you might not understand which ones are the best and which ones are not. So if you start with Amplify, you just type one thing in the CLI, you configure a couple of things depending on what you need, and you get a working Cognito that has basically all the best practices built in. As I said, you can always create the backend separately and connect it to your client, is no problem. But if you want to get started and start building things without really knowing all these services, is very powerful. Another thing that I like from Amplify, that everything is built as CloudFormation. So all the infrastructure that Amplify will be building for you is a CloudFormation script. And what is CloudFormation? CloudFormation is like the basic infrastructure as code language for AWS. So when you build on this language, then it will get deployed as a stack of different services. For example, if you have an application like the one we are going to build today, it will have authorization, it will have an API, it might have some search. Everything will be part of this stack. So everything can be ported around in different AWS accounts or in different environments. Extremely simple, just by modifying a couple of parameters that Amplify will take care of for you. And then if you want to get out from Amplify because of any reason, you always have that infrastructure as file code that you can port it out and always work in AWS. So you're not trapped in this system. And Amplify works in the category-based high-level abstractions, and these are the abstractions that are available for today. We have some that are very normal, like authorization and APIs, analytics, but then we have things that are more crazy, like virtual reality or augmented reality. We have machine learning and all these kind of things, and you can access those features with just one use of one library in your client application. And we will look at some of these examples, mostly with API and authorization that I will be showing today. But in the documentation, everything is very well explained, and you will see how you can use the other categories pretty simple. So the CLI is very simple. You basically type amplify something and you get something done. The first thing you need to do, amplify init, initialize your project, Amplify add and the name of the category, adds that category to your project. Then we have some testing capabilities. Then we have Amplify push. That's very important because when you do Amplify add a category, that doesn't create it in the cloud. It creates the CloudFormation script in your local machine. And until you don't do Amplify push, the changes are not going to the cloud. So that's something very important to have in mind, because a lot of people come to me, it's like, I have added this and that and it's not working. Have you done Amplify push? If you don't do that, nothing goes to the cloud. So that's something very important to have in mind. And then we have Amplify update name of a category. If you want to update that particular category, like change the API configuration or the authentication or things like that. We will see this in the examples in a second. Then we have the libraries, and the libraries are the ways to interact to the services. So we have libraries for API, for authentication, for, I don't know, augmented reality, predictions, and basically they will create a simple way for us to connect our clients to the backend. So we don't need to use external libraries, and everything is kind of wrapped around. So if we want to do a get, we just pass the name of the endpoint and then the last part of the endpoint, and that's it. We don't need to define the whole URL because that might change depending on the environment we are. And when we are using Amplify, Amplify is aware on which environment we are calling this service from, and it will handle that automatically for us. So basically, we just pass the name of the endpoint and then the back part of the endpoint, and that's it. And the same with authentication. You will have a lot of features that are coming out of the box with authentication, a lot of UI components that will help you a lot. And you will see how we can create a login page or create an account page with no code. So let's get started. I think it's the time now. You have enough information to get started. I'm going to do an example with React, but the language is not really important because I'm not the best React coder. So you will see my React is quite basic and crappy. So you can do this with any of the libraries that I show you that is supported by Amplify. I just pick React because that's the one I'm most familiar with. You can get the code for this demo in this link. I will share the code again, this link again at the end of the presentation, and as well, the slides will be available for you so you can try it out. So let's go to my screen and I will clone the project. So I have this here, I will clone it. So we can start from the same point than you are. Git clone. In order to get this started, you need to have all the kind of libraries for Amplify installed and configured in your computer. So while this clones, and I will do npm install, well, I will go into repo first. I will show you now how you can get everything. So if you go to the Amplify documentation, in here you can find get started, and you can basically follow the tutorial for the first bit. That will tell you what you need to have in order to get started with this tutorial. You need to have an AWS account, install the AWS Amplify, and get some libraries and things into your computer, and also connect your AWS account to your Amplify. And after that, then you need to basically have some kind of prerequisites. I don't know where they are listed here, that you need to have node, npm, and git in order to get started. So these are things that you need to have, and I will not show you. So now our application is in my computer. I will open it with Visual Studio Code. And I will also run npm start so it comes into my browser, because this should be working. Let's hope so. Good. So it's a super basic React application that doesn't have anything. So basically, this is a create React app, if you know that that creates this type of look and feel, very basic. So when you open this project, you will see this base folder, and here is all my cheat sheets, and you can find all the code in the steps. So if you want to follow along, you can basically just copy and paste these files into the different places, and you will be able also to follow along. And then if you follow the README, There are all the steps that we are going to do today in this README file. I did it for myself and for you because I will forget it in 2 months after I will not show this demo anymore. So here you have all the different things. So I will open my terminal. And the first thing we want to do after we install the project is to run Amplify init. And this will initialize our Amplify project. And for that, we need to give some information. The first thing is to enter a name for your project. I will leave the ugliest name in the planet. You can put it something more meaningful. Then you need to enter an environment. I will put dev, but you can put whatever it makes you happy. And then you just need to choose editor and your framework. And then I will just go with all the defaults. And then it tells me what kind of AWS profile you want to use. I have one already configured, and I will pick this Amplify project profile. This is something that you need to do before starting, that what I show you how to create an AWS account and configure the project. So now this is connecting to the cloud and is starting to create all the basic things that this project needs in order to get started. So let's go to the slides while this does its things. And in the slides, you will see slides for all this if you want to follow along. And now when this finished, we will add authentication. That's the first thing we want to do. We want to have some kind of form that the person will put a username and a password and will sign in. Basically, authentication systems are most all the same. In my career, I've been coding for over 15 years. I built 4 different authentication services that were more or less the same. So I like this idea of using services that don't reinvent the wheel. It's something very serverless that we don't want to reinvent the wheel all the time. And for that, I really encourage you to use Cognito, or in this case, Cognito, but you can use Auth0 or something like that. For Amplify, the connection with Cognito is built in, and it works very well. And you will see that it's also integrated into the API and other services later on. But so when you integrate with Cognito, you will do Amplified at auth, you will set up some basics, and you will get, without doing anything, well, you need to add just tiny bits of code in your front end, you will get this sign in page where you can register your create accounts, register your users, and get everything without creating it. So we will see that. You can also get federated authentication if you want. That means connecting with Google, Facebook, Twitter, Amazon, I don't know, whatever you need. So you can also get that out of the box with Cognito.
Marcia, can I ask some question? Actually, someone
go for it.
So like they're asking that when it is coming for GitHub plugin for, like, I think it's a question to Cognito, but
what?
Like when will people use the GitHub plugin with Cognito? So
I don't know if it's available, GitHub login in Cognito.
I don't think that it's available, but do you know?
No.
You know about like any date?
I don't know. I don't know the timelines for that.
Okay, like I think it should be coming soon because
I hope.
Facebook. Yeah.
I hope, but you can always configure your own. If GitHub supports OAuth, you can always configure that manually with Cognito, so you can do that as well. But it's not out of the box. You need to do some work.
Okay.
So yes, so you can configure your federated authentication. So now our front end should be ready, and we can come back here and clean the screen and add Amplify, add auth. And this, as I said, will add some configuration to our project. So it will ask that if we want the default configuration, if we want the federated authentication with social provider, or we want to do some manual configuration. I will be lazy and pick the default. And then it will ask me what kind of attribute I want the users to register with, sign in with. I will pick username. And then that's it. And with that, I will have a Cognito configure. So I will just do Amplify push, and I will show you some things. This is pushing the changes to the cloud. It takes long, usually when you do this, so I will just leave it in the back. And every time you do Amplify push, you will see this table that will show you the different categories that you have in your application. For now, we only have authentication and the operation that is going to perform. So while this happens, I will show you what happens when I did Amplify add auth. So in our Amplify folder, we will have all the infrastructure as code and all the configuration from our application. This was created when we did Amplify init. And here you can see in the backend, we can see all the categories. For now, we only have auth, but when we add the API or when you add others, you will see here. And here you can see the different CloudFormation kind of, oh, no, it's CloudFormation linter that jumped. You can see all the CloudFormation that is using to create this Cognito user pool. So it's all here for you to try it and use it. And my linter got crazy. Let's close that up. And let's go now and modify the front end. So when this is ready, we can try it. I need to close this Zoom window that is getting me crazy. So I have already prepared a file that I will copy. I have even the code for copying it, so I don't need to type because as I say, I'm very lazy. So, and you can also follow along at home, being as lazy as I am. And basically the index file doesn't have much. The CSS doesn't have much, but the app.js does have a little bit. And I want to show you what is in there. So this is the imports that we need to have, and we need to import the Amplify authenticator and Amplify sign out. These are UI components that we are going to use, and this is what it depends on, really on which library you are using, which framework. If you're using React, Angular, you might have different UI components with different names, but at the end of the day you will have similar things. And then I have a header component, and there I have a title, and I will add this button for the sign out. This is very typical that on the top of our application, we have a sign out, and you will see it in a second. And then I have my application. This will be all built in this app.js file. As I say, I will do a very simple application. And then I wrap my application between these tags. And these are a component that it comes from this library from Amplify UI components that will add authentication to our application, and everything that is between those tags would need to be authenticated. And that's all we need to do in our front end in order to get Cognito set up. So still updating. So when it is finished, this is live coding, so bear with me. But when this finished, then I can show you how it looks in the web page. I don't know if there is any questions. This is a great time.
There is one actually. Nick is asking a kind of a good question for beginners like me as well. So he's asking that, is Amplify CLI creates the Amplify folder and the source folder at the same time when you do Amplify init?
When you do Amplify init, it will create the source folder and basically source, public. This is coming when you do, you can go to the browser and I can show you the steps. If I found my mouse, where it went? Here. Oh, yeah, live coding. So I can show you the steps in the documentation of Amplify. So these are steps that you have not seen. The first one is I create my empty React application. And when I do npm create React app, that creates my source and my public folder and this kind of public source and these files here. So that comes from the npm create React app. This is a React application with no Amplify whatsoever. And then when I run the Amplify init, that creates this Amplify folder. And basically it will not have the auth because that's something it will come when I do Amplify add auth. So it will be kind of empty with just the bare bones of our, like the configurations. So now our application is ready. Let's hope this works. Yay. So this is our application. And this came out of the box. I didn't type it. As you saw, I just put like 4 lines of code in the front end. And I can create an account. This comes from Cognito. I can put an account here, a password. I can put an email address. Let's hope this is correct. My email for testing. And then in my email address, you will not see it. I will receive an email for validation. And this is all handled automatically by Cognito. So you could do this manually and it takes a lot of time. So this is great. You are getting all these features out of the box without doing anything. And this is my type of coding because, as I said, I'm very lazy. So this code that you see here is the one that comes to my email to confirm my email address. So now I should have everything ready and I'm logged in into my beautiful application. And this is the sign out button that I added from the UI component, that if I click it, it signs me out. And now that I have my account, I can log in. This account is created on the cloud already. So this exists already in the cloud, even though my project is local. So here is all the configurations we did, and we did the Amplify push. So you can find everything in the slides as well. So the next step is to add an API. And for that, we are going to use GraphQL. I don't know if you're familiar what is GraphQL, but basically with REST, you're doing a call for each of the endpoints from the client to the backend. And that's okay. But when you're working with client applications, GraphQL is a little bit more efficient because it will be doing one call from the client to the backend. And then the backend, the GraphQL backend will be doing the rest, organizing the calls to the right data sources. That's how they're called in the GraphQL schema language. So in that way, that's more efficient for client applications because you're doing less calls to the backend, and that's reduced the network connectivity. Usually every time you open a network connection in the mobile phone, you're draining battery and you're draining connection megabytes or gigabytes, depending on what you have available in your data plan. Also, when you're doing REST, in general, you're bringing in a lot of data that is not necessary and for populating that particular view, or even you need to do multiple calls to multiple APIs in order to populate a view. So GraphQL is way more efficient for client applications.
Marcia, can I ask something? It will be kind of
Sure.
a dumb question for
there is no dumb questions.
Yeah. So like when I think about GraphQL, it seems so logical to me that like I even like forget about like what was good about REST API. So so like could you please like tell me when REST API is more convenient over GraphQL? Like,
well, I think it depends on your use case. GraphQL is great for clients, connecting to a server, and that's where for me GraphQL shines. But for server to server, I still think REST is way clearer and more simple, because when you add GraphQL, you need to add all this GraphQL server and all this logic to handle all these queries and management of connections. So you are adding layers of complexity that I think for the client it's deserved, because usually you have multiple clients and you might have even different types of client. You might have an iOS, an Android, a web. For me, for example, my experience with GraphQL, I had 16 different types of clients because we were working with smart TVs. So GraphQL was amazing for that. But for backend to backend, from server to server, I think REST is way more efficient. You have less overhead, and usually computers can talk to each other very well when they are connecting with REST. So I will definitely, I use REST all the time for my server to server connections. So,
okay.
and we can discuss if we can use event driven. That's another topic, maybe how you can use event bridge for your server to server connections, but but that's another discussion.
Dennis is asking about like is GraphQL about just API decomposition?
Well, GraphQL is kind of two things. It's a query language for APIs. So you will define, you will have a schema where you will define all the types and all the operations, but it's also a runtime. You need to have kind of a backend running some kind of code doing things in order to connect to the different data sources, because all the operations, basically the operations are queries, mutations, or subscriptions, like get me something, create something, do something, and those operations need to be resolved by someone. So what GraphQL will sit between your client and your data sources. And when I talk about data sources, it can be a server, it can be a database, it can be a Lambda, it can be Elasticsearch, it can be anything, and needs to do some kind of logic to be able to fetch the data from the different data source and convert it into something that the client can understand. So do I have the slides on how GraphQL works? No, I didn't put it here. So basically, when somebody makes a query on GraphQL, it looks like get me something. And then GraphQL will transform that query. For example, imagine our data source is Dynamo, or even easier, we can say an SQL server. And then GraphQL will talk to the SQL server, and it will say, hey, select all from blah, blah, blah table where blah, 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 blah. And then the SQL will understand that query and will return, for example, a table of things. And then GraphQL needs to have some processing logic in order to convert that table of things into something that the client can understand, that in this case is a JSON. So GraphQL is a language, a query language, and a runtime. So it has a lot of logic. And for not writing the logic yourself, when we are doing this Amplify, we are connecting to AppSync. So AppSync is a kind of managed GraphQL server that will allow you to connect to different data sources and will do all the kind of magic between the data sources and your client. So those magics are called resolvers, and GraphQL AppSync has native support for Lambda and Dynamo and Elasticsearch. And then you can integrate with Aurora and also with HTTP, but there is not that much magic, but you need to write some resolvers. That's called the kind of glue connecting your GraphQL backend into the different data sources. And basically AppSync will handle all the taking the request from the clients and connecting to the backend and processing the response to return to the client. So it's fully managed and you don't need to do anything. If you want to do GraphQL on your own, you can always use a library like Apollo. That's something I used before AppSync was born, and you install it in an EC2 instance and it does everything for you. But well, you need to manage the scalability and all the things that the managed services do for you. So basically, here is some of the examples that I was saying. You get a request from the client. In this case, they want to get a post. This imagine is a blog post, and they say, I want these particular attributes, and that's something very powerful in GraphQL, that you can define exactly the attributes you want. Even the post might have 20 different attributes. If the client needs only 4, they will only get 4, and then this will get transformed into the different data sources by AppSync automatically, and it will return a JSON back. So if the EC2 imagine is an SQL server, it will still return a JSON because AppSync will take the load of converting that. So we can go and add a API in our service and see how this looks. Ooh, I lost my mouse every time. Here it is. So I do Amplify, add API. And I need to choose between GraphQL and REST. REST will create an API gateway, and GraphQL will create an AppSync endpoint, and I need to put a name. And then I need to secure my API calls. I can use API keys, Cognito user pools, IAM or OpenID Connect. I will use Cognito user pool because when I did Amplify add auth, I already have created a Cognito user pool. So this out of the box is secure. Do I want to do something else? No. Do I have an annotated schema? I will put no, even though I have one, but this is just a way around to get to where I want to get. Do I want to go through the guided schema creation? I will say yes. And then I pick any because I will be just overwriting that. Because I wanted to get here that says, do you want to edit your schema now? And I will say yes. And now GraphQL AppSync, and now Amplify, sorry, opens this schema.graphql. And here I can type my schema. So I have it in my cheat sheet, the schema that I want. That is very simple. And if you know something about GraphQL, you might be saying, that's not a GraphQL schema. And you're totally right. That's not a GraphQL schema. But I will do a push and then we come back and discuss about this in a second. So we can talk while this is going to the cloud. So now everything is ready and I will do Amplify push. And then it will tell me that there is a new category and I need to say yes. And now when you're doing Amplify push with API, it will ask you to some more questions. If you want to get some generated code and you will say, yes, I will show you in a second what is the generated code. You pick the language you wanted, and then I always go through all the defaults. And now it goes to the cloud. So while that's going on, I will go back to my schema I just pasted. And as I said, the GraphQL schema needs to have the type definitions and the operations. And when you look at this, there is no operations here. And in a GraphQL schema with no operations, that means there is no entry door to your application. Nobody can do anything. But this is a kind of tuned GraphQL schema. It has these little annotations here. The model is a directive from Amplify that will generate the GraphQL schema with all the CRUD operations. So you will create the create node, update node, list node, get node, delete node. All these operations will be generated automatically, so you don't need to type them. So that's really good. It will also create a DynamoDB table to store these nodes, and it will create automatically all the connections between AppSync and Dynamo, so you can perform these operations. So 5 letters and an @ will give you all that for free. And the auth, it's doing something similar. It's giving you a lot of value for a little amount of code type. That is creating an authorization rule on this type. And this one in particular means that only the owners of these nodes can see it. So when I show you the link to my demo and you create nodes, you will see that you cannot see any of your friends' nodes, or we will be all using the same backend, and you can only see that. And you can create rules that are more complex, like only the author can delete and the rest can do everything, or different groups, or very complicated nodes.
It's really very powerful. Like, I didn't know about
it's very powerful. So I love this. So in here you can see what I was saying, that when you put this model, you get all these things for free, and the Dynamo table and all the operations in your GraphQL schema. And then when you add the auth, you get the Amazon Cognito configuration in your API. And as I said, you have to do Amplify push. So I will edit the front end again. This edit is a little bit bigger because I will add a little bit of logic into our application. I will just copy the application file too. So if you want to follow along, you can do it. And basically this app file doesn't have much, but it has a little bit more than the previous one. So now I modified my application by importing these things, and these are the generated code. It's not visible yet. It will be visible when this finish. These are generated code by Amplify with all our GraphQL queries, mutations, and subscriptions. So they will keep them updated as we change our schema. So this is great. You don't need to type it yourself, because usually keeping this in sync is very painful for client developers. And then I have created a couple of components, so we can see them here. We have the first one, that is the add node. And basically this is just a visual component. It doesn't have any logic. Basically you will see it in a second. It's a little box where I can create a new node. Then we have the node list that is listing all the nodes and allows me to delete them. And then in the application is where I added the business logic. And here I have this delete node and add node, and then the component did mount, that are the ones that are doing the calls to the API. So this is the way we call an API in GraphQL. We use the library API. We use this method GraphQL, and then we pass the GraphQL operation, use this library with the right query that, or mutation or subscriptions that we want. And this is the one that we import from here. There is a string, very simple. And if it needs some parameters, we just pass it. So now this is over, and you can see in our source, this new folder GraphQL appear. And here you can see all these 4 files that are generated by Amplify, the mutations, the queries, and the subscriptions. And here we have our schema that is, how many lines we wrote here? 4, and it has 2,156, I don't know, it's just fucked up crazy. So this is what created by GraphQL, by Amplify for us. So with 4 lines of code, we have all these created for us. And then the queries are basically how we can call the backend. So we need to, for example, to get all the nodes, we can either pass some parameters, but it's not mandatory, and we will get nodes back. And these are just simple ways of calling the backend that is all created for us that we can use in our code. So how our code looks, let's refresh the page. And this is, again, I lost my mouse. This is basically the page that I just told you, that we have a nodes box that where we can add nodes, and I can add a node, and then I can delete a node. So that's kind of it. And then if we want to add search, and I don't think we will see it maybe in action, let's see. We just need to do add searchable. This takes forever because this is Elasticsearch. This is not serverless, so it will create a piece of software that will be costing you money for running it. So if you want to add search, you just add that, and you have also the base file number 3 that has all the front end for it. But I will not do it because this takes like half an hour to create the Elasticsearch index and everything, but it's there for you if you want to try it. I want to show you one thing more before we stop this. And let's see if I have some slides about it. These are all the things. These are the add search. So basically just add the add searchable, what I was telling you, and it will create the Elasticsearch service for you and the capability to search. This is not serverless. So please, if you do this at home, remember to remove this after you have finished playing. If not, you will get a nice AWS bill. But I want to show you the full stack capability of this, and this is where we go and deploy the application. So imagine now we create a GitHub repo of our application, and we put it in GitHub, and we are a team of people working. So I will go to Amplify. So if I type in my CLI Amplify console, it will take me to the project, and you can connect your application to GitHub. So you can do connect branch. This one is already connected, and I wanted to show you because this process for the first time takes quite a long time. You connect to the branch, you connect to a GitHub repo. So you need to have basically your GitHub already configured. Oh, I broke it. I hope not. And then it will start. It will also ask you if you want to create a new environment for your backend, and you should say yes. So now if I look, I have my frontend, that is this application, and my backend, and I have dev. This is the one that we created when we did Amplify in it. And we could have as many as developers we have in our team. This is not important. But then we have the stage, and this name I give it myself when I was creating this connection, that basically every time there is a change in this GitHub repo, in this particular branch, it will deploy all the backend and all the front end into this stage. And then if we have multiple people working in this project, we all can see the changes going on here. And you could have you can have a CI/CD pipeline with multiple branches, like master and production, or stage and production in your GitHub repo, and you can manage the CI/CD of your project from this place. So this is very powerful to work with multiple people in the team. Everybody commits to the GitHub repo in one particular branch, and then all the changes go to the cloud, and everybody can see them and test them from here. So here we have a link, and if you want to try it out, I will show you the link here. You can go to this link, and you can add a username, a password, and create an account. And then you can add nodes and remove nodes. Doesn't have much logic, but if you want to play with it, it's there. It will be there for a while after I finish speaking today. And you can see that you won't see the nodes of anybody else. The nodes are your own. And if I go to my database, because nothing is encrypted, I will be able to see all your nodes. So be nice. But it's something, I think, how long it took us, maybe 30 minutes to build, and I spoke for 25 of those minutes. So it's something very simple to start building and creating and getting some code out and showing things to your boss or your colleagues, or even if you need to build a prototype. I think this is a great place to start when you don't know much about the cloud. And when you do a change in the branch, for example, I have it connected to master, you will see that this flow starts provisioning, and there is even here capabilities for adding unit tests if you want, and you can add them to a build script that there is, and you can add integration test in the verify step. So this is very, very powerful. So it's not a toy. You can use it as a toy, as I do in these demos, but if you want to use it in a real project, this is really designed for working in real projects. And you can then have all your, in here you can have your notifications, your environmental variables, controls to who can access. You can get the logs from your applications. You can buy a domain and manage the domain. So you can do a lot of things that you can do all around AWS just in this screen. And I think that's very powerful, because sometimes AWS is very scary for beginners. So if you want to get the code, this is the link. I will share it afterwards again, so you can check it out. And that's it. If somebody has questions, I'm happy to take them. Don't make me code, please. I'm suck at coding live. Thank you.
We had a question before that from YouTube to you.
Ooh.
So like they ask, since I don't know nothing about this, I would just like read the question straight. So he asks, do you have any information about with Authenticator HOC? Is there a serious difference between with Authenticator and these new React UI components?
No idea. They should go and check the Amplify documentation, because at least in the last month, they've been changing the authentication URL component. So a lot of my demos start failing. So that's something I think maybe Nader is the right person. So if you don't know Nader, then you should go and talk to him. Nader David is an amazing Amplify evangelist and developer advocate. So definitely you should go and check him. I think if you have really hardcore questions, he's your Nader David. I think we can find him right away. Yeah, senior developer advocate for Amplify. This is the right guy for all the Amplify hardcore questions.
And Nader is a great person. So yes. he was our guest in February before all the coronavirus crisis began. He was in Istanbul. We made a very nice session with us, and he's a very nice person. We just like solved this with him, and you can ask any questions. Like
definitely, he knows. He knows everything. So he's, I think for this particular question, I think he might be the right guy to answer that. Somebody asked in the chat, at least in the Q&A, I can see, when you let AppSync provision your DynamoDB resources, how does it determine the hash and the sort key? It does it automatically. So if we go to, basically it's using the ID for, it's a very simple table. I think, I don't know. I don't want to open my Dynamo thing. It's full of crap. But it basically, our schema has an ID and multiple things. So it will just grab that ID as the sort, as the main key, as the primary key. And then I think if you have a composite key, for example, you are using this annotation in Amplify that says that you will compose something with different things, or things are relating, then it's building different sort keys, but things happen very automatically. It's all machine doing it. So if you wanted a very efficient Dynamo table, maybe you need to build it yourself. Somebody's asking, I'm used to coding, disappeared. I'm used to coding backends with serverless framework or AWS SAM. Is there a simple way to add a Lambda? Yes, you can. If you build your backend, there is this file So if you want to use all your Lambda functions, well, first, two things. First, if you want to build your backend, there is this file that is called, where it is, I lost it, source. And here, AWS exports, I will not show it. It has all the basic URLs, ARNs, all this important information from AWS to know to which endpoint, to which resource to connect. So if you have built your own application, you can always create this file by hand. I have made many videos on how to do this by hand in my YouTube channel, so I can encourage you to check it out. If you want to build your own Lambda, again, when you're using some of the components, it will ask you, do you already have this Lambda? And if you say yes, you can always provide the ARN to it. For example, when you're adding storage, it will create an S3 bucket, and it will ask you, hey, do you want to trigger a Lambda whenever you upload something? And if you say yes, it will ask you, do you have the Lambda already, or you want to build it from scratch? If you have the Lambda already, you can pass the Amazon resource name, the ARN, that is defining your Lambda. And then if there is permissions for your Amplify to invoke that Lambda, you will be able to do it. And that Lambda can be built on serverless framework or whatever. Does Amplify GraphQL has a caching mechanism? There is some cache in place, but the problem with GraphQL, as the queries are so diverse, it can be a little bit painful to create a cache, but AppSync has some kind of caching in place. Is there one-click contact form like NetFly form? I don't think there is a one-click contact form component, but who knows in a few months, because this has evolved so much since I started playing with this 7-8 months ago, so no idea.
AWS wishlist.
Yeah, definitely. Put it in Twitter, hashtag AWS wishlists, and you might get it.
And there was one funny question on chat. Can we say that AWS Amplify equals to JHipster with cloud integration?
Maybe. I don't know. I think it's another tool to start with serverless. So I think this is something I talk a lot, like what is the right framework to work with? It depends on your skills and what you want to build. If you already have the CloudFormation skills, maybe you want to go all in CloudFormation. If you are a backend developer and you want to start with serverless, maybe serverless framework or SAM are the right tool. If you're a client developer and you're great at React or Angular or whatever, not like me, and you want to get started with the cloud, maybe Amplify is the right place because it's removing a lot of the noise and it's targeted for you. So at the end of the day, they all deploy CloudFormation stacks and use the same components. So it depends the level of abstraction. So
I think this is all for the questions, and it was like really educative for people who doesn't know much about Amplify like me. And I learned a lot. Thank you, Marcia, for that.
No problem. And I will give you all the links for the things, so then you can share them in your community and people can try it out if they want.
So it was
Thank you very much, Marcia.
Happy to hear.
Pleasure to host you here, and we will be looking for more in the following months.
Yeah, I'm here. I'm always happy to be at midday, so I don't need to stay late.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Bye bye. See you next week.